Ayo, so I was scrolling, right? You know me, right or not. I'm kind of what you'd call a scroller. I got cash. I go to the polls. They call me a poller. I go up, right? I don't know. That was fucking stupid. All right, we're jumping in. Age of History 2 tier list of the different scenarios that are in the game. Obviously, the football war scenario, possibly the greatest scenario of all time. Do we all agree? Football war scenario, pretty fucking based. I'm joking. This is probably the worst scenario in the game. But since how bad it is, right? We have to respect how terrible this scenario is, right? I got to give it at least a D. Are we satisfied with that? The scenario is so bad that it deserves at least a D tier. Next up, we have Brazilian states scenario. Now, if I lived in Brazil, I'd assume this would be an S tier, right? I'm assuming if you live in Brazil, this is a really good fucking scenario. But for me, an American, I gotta rank it a C tier because this has no relatability for me. Obviously, it's probably a good scenario if you live in Brazil, but outside of Brazil, it's not really a scenario for me personally. You know, just because I ranked Brazil a C tier, I'm assuming that people who don't live in the United States, they might like this scenario because obviously the US states are pretty recognizable. But then again, I'm assuming they don't really care. There's probably a lot of Europeans who don't really care about the American states, and for that reason, I'm putting it a C tier. I can't be fucking biased, bro. It's an average scenario. It has the states. Most people outside of America aren't going to care about the scenario. It gets a C tier. Next, we have the Emu War. Now, Emu War, it's a very boring scenario, yes, but it's the fact that the emu are in the game at all, we got to give it maybe not an S tier. It's definitely not worth S tier. I'll give it like a B tier, right? I'll give it a B tier. It's a good meme, but it's an old meme and it doesn't really check out anymore. I'll be real. The meme has kind of fallen off. The emu scenario, nobody plays it, but it is cool we have the emu in the game at all. The China scenario, honestly, this one is pretty bad as well. I give it an F tier. It just doesn't really appeal to me. It's not that interesting. Is this like the Bronze Age scenario? I don't really remember which one this is. This is a pretty bad one though. Also, I'm gonna give it like an F. F. No, I'll give it like a yeah. I'll give it an F tier. I don't play it. The World War II scenario, a very good scenario, but Germany is very weak in it, which is kind of sad. France is just, they always smack them around, right? France is always going to smack Germany around, but it's still a good scenario. I'm going to give it an S tier because it does have World War II in it. I wish we had the World War One scenario, but obviously you can make it in the editor, so it's not a super big deal, I suppose, but it's just kind of like one of those things where it's just a little bit of a hassle. Next up, we have the Civil War scenario. Again, this one's just kind of boring, I'll be real, but it is a little bit more interesting, I suppose, because it does have a real life war aspect to it. I'll give it like a B tier. I think that's fair. What would actually be interesting is if they expanded the scenario and included the entire world, but, I guess we'll take what we get. If it had the whole world in it, it'd probably be an A tier scenario. And, for that reason, actually, I'm going to knock it down to a C tier, because it's kind of boring, I'll be real. Next, we have the Son Goku period for Japan. This is a pretty cool scenario, but again, it just doesn't really have that playability for me. But it is a little bit cooler probably than the Civil War scenario. But again, I think Japan is probably it's probably more of a C tier, but it's probably ranked above this actually. I'll rank this one kind of low, honestly. Next, we have the Roman scenario. This is a fun one, but it's not my favorite. I'm going to put it in A tier. It has its playability, but I really only ever play it if I'm feeling like playing as Rome, and playing as Rome is really easy, so there's only so much fun I can actually have in the scenario. The South Africa scenario is really boring. I'm going to give it like a D tier. I don't really enjoy it. Obviously, we have the Napoleonic War scenario from the Europe. This is a pretty good one. I wish it was like a full map, but it's not. I'm gonna give it. I guess I'll give it like an S tier. It's a good scenario, and I think it is more playable than A tier. I'm assuming that this is the modern world scenario. Modern world scenario is probably like one of my most played scenarios, so I got to put it up there in S tier. 1440 easily in S tier. Probably ranked above modern day. There is a lot more playability here in 1440. So something like this probably for the S tier. As for these other scenarios, I really don't know what they are, so I'm just not even going to include them on the list. This is just a copycat of what we've already put up here. So here's my tier list for Age of History 2 scenarios. Pretty cool, pretty cool. Oh, here we go. Major countries of the world, all right? We're going to do a tier list for Age of History 2. Where these countries rank in the game. Are they strong? Are they weak? This is not about if I like the country. This is clearly about if they're strong or if they're weak in Age of History 2. Brazil usually does pretty good. They don't always do amazing because Argentina usually gives them some problems. So we're going to put Brazil pretty high. Alright, so this one is New Zealand. New Zealand is actually really fucking broken in Age of History 2. They always amass this crazy economy because nobody ever attacks them. For that reason, New Zealand is goated in the game. Australia, on the other hand, I've never seen them do very well. They're decent, they don't die, and that's about all I can really give them credit for. Malaysia always does really fucking bad in Age of History 2. They got to be ranked pretty low on this tier list. I've never seen them do good. I wish they did better because they're a cool country, but they're just not that powerful. France, they'll do decent, but sometimes they'll do pretty bad. I'll give France like a decent tier list because they do good some games, but other games they just don't do very well. The same kind of goes with Germany, who also gets pretty powerful most games, but they have their issues here and there. Usually one of these two come up. Well, actually, Poland does pretty well also. These three countries are like the main ones who usually win in Europe in Age of History. Next up, we have Russia. I'll be real with y'all. Russia, I've never seen them do good. They always do completely terrible. They get slammed by China, or they get slammed even by like small countries like Lithuania, Ukraine. They never win, and for that reason, Russia is ranked really low. Pakistan, they'll do okay, but I'll put them in decent. I'm gonna put India in decent also because usually it's one of these two countries that form a Giga Chat empire, and it just kind of depends. I guess I'll put them in very good because it's usually always one of these two that come out on top in that region. Alright, I'm gonna be real with y'all. I've never seen America do good in this game, but they never die either. So for that reason, do we put them amazing or very good? They've never died. Like I never see them die, and if I do, it's really rare. I'll put them amazing just because it's super rare to see America actually lose in this game. Because they never die, but they never really become that powerful either. Just because in the game, America's economy is not that powerful in the provinces, and their population growth is also really low compared to a lot of the other provinces on the map. And then Vietnam, the final country. Where did I rank Thailand? I put them in decent. I think that's probably where we're going to put Vietnam also. And this is my Age of History 2 country tier list. The countries I think that do the best in AI. Again, New Zealand is usually pretty broken late game if they survive, and they usually do survive because nobody ever attacks them. For this reason, here's my tier list. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one. Peace.